Welcome to Nursing Life 101, the most important nursing class you never got to take in nursing school. We will be traversing different objectives like interviewing, what to do in nursing school, boundaries, burnout, and so much more. If this interests you, I hope you are taking good notes because class is now in session.
Hello, and welcome to Nurse Life 101. We're so excited to have you here with us as we dive into the world of nursing, sharing our experiences, insights, and a little bit of fun along the way. I'm Colby, and I couldn't be happier to introduce my co-host.
Hey guys, my name's Christopher. Together, we'll be bringing you real stories, practical tips, and discussions about all things nursing. Whether you're a fellow nurse or just curious about the life behind the scrubs, we're thrilled to have you join us. Just remember that we did talk about the Clinton ones earlier, about 2 weeks ago. I just wanted to bring a little bit of extra information because we definitely started to talk about this longer than we anticipated.
We had so much to share.
We did. And so we wanted you to kind of hear a little bit more, and hopefully you will be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So with Clinton ones, sometimes for you, Colby, for myself, I also went to a whole different place.
Yeah.
Like, I had never been here. You have never been here.
Yeah, like one other time before I moved here. So, like, not only are you starting a new job, you're fresh out of school, you're learning how to do your job, the potential that you've moved to a new location where you don't know anyone potentially or know much about the area is a whole other like challenge to tackle.
Yeah. And to add to my difficulty, I started my career in fall of 19, ended orientation early winter of, or excuse me, late winter of 2020.
And then COVID happened.
Many of you know about that. And so everything shut down.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can I even like go meet people which I wouldn't want to because I'm an introvert and I'm like, I'd much rather just stay in the house.
So COVID was actually good for you.
Yes, please.
But no, it's a good point to make. Like that was an extra challenge on top of an already challenging thing to tackle. Like I said, I think when you start a new job, I think a great piece of advice that I actually, from my current manager, she said whenever she meets with the new graduate nurses frequently throughout their first year, just to like get a pulse check and see how they're doing and how they're acclimating, and to have a two-way street with communication that they can share and she can give feedback and vice versa. But a piece of advice that she always gives them is to like try and maintain a life outside the hospital. It's so easy in your first year of nursing to just get consumed with nursing. Like it's your first job, which we were going to touch on in a minute, but this kind of goes with it. It's your first like adult job potentially, and it's the first time you're making adult money. And one thing I think that gets really tantalizing is picking up extra shifts.
Yeah.
And then you're working your life away, and you lose your life outside of the hospital.
Right.
So when you're coming in and you're starting in a new place, in a new location, like Christopher and I did, like we both moved to it. Well, he was living here for a little bit, but we both moved to he moved to a new area. I moved to a new state. Like I knew very minimum amount of people, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to work all the time and make a crap ton of money.
Yeah, because I don't know anybody.
Yeah, because you don't know anybody.
Right.
It's so easy to just get consumed with work. So her advice of like trying to maintain, like find a hobby is really what she said. Like find a hobby outside of nursing. Like find something that you like to do because it's a great outlet for you to like let go of the stress of work and just get your mind off of it. It's different. I just think when she told me that, and I was like, oh my God, it's so simple.
It is.
But I was like, I wish someone told me that because I did exactly what I just gave as an example. I worked my tail off and I got burnt out so early in my career because of the amount of hours that I worked.
Yeah, my manager likes to say, your work funds your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it doesn't mean that your life's your work. It means you are working to do the fun things that you want to do outside of
Yes.
work, your life outside of work. And she says that. And unfortunately, I say to many of the people that I precept, I'm like, your first 6 to 12 months after you finish orientation, don't dare pick up a shift. Now, and I say that one a little bit selfish. I like to pick up the shift.
Like, leave them open for me.
Just, it's a shellfish. It's a shellfish. It's a selfish reason, but there is a genuine caring reason behind it. You see the money and you chase it. Everybody sees money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are in a world of money, and that's what we do. And so when you pick up one shift, you're like, oh my goodness.
You're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. You're like, wait a second.
Yeah. Especially like you have a lot of student loans. You're like, oh,
Right.
I'm going to pay this off. Or like you had to like buy a car after graduation. Like,
Right.
oh, I need to make my car payment. This will pay that. Like, if you do pick up extra, just keep it in mind and keep yourself in check, because I really, truly, deeply in my heart wish somebody had said that to me. And instead they were just like, oh yeah, Colby's picking up again. Like, we're not going to be short-staffed. But
Yeah.
it really killed me in the long run, where I just like fell so out of love with my career for a good long time. And I was like, I need a break. Like, I can't do this anymore. It was bad. So just keep that in mind. And I think what Christopher said, like 6 to 12 months after orientation, if you really truly don't need to be working that hard, don't.
Right.
Like acclimate to
Really
acclimate to if you're new to the area, explore it. Check it out. Go to the webpage of the city that you're living in. See what they have going on. It's a lot of fun to explore a new area. You can treat it like a little mini vacation. Like, be a pretend tourist for a day.
Right.
Do that cheesy stuff that you see people do. It's just like a fun way to get to know your community. Look on Facebook. I love Facebook Marketplace. I love Facebook groups. I'm in so many different groups on Facebook, like hiking groups, sourdough making groups. But you make like I got into sourdough last year. This is kind of a tangential, but I figured out how to do it through a Facebook starter group, and I bought my starter on Facebook Marketplace from somebody locally in the community. And that's just like a neat way to use social media.
Right.
I think also a lot of health systems try to set you up. This is kind of work related, but you could take it out of work realm, but with like a mentor.
Yeah.
Like, you can meet with a mentor and try to get connected with other people outside of work. Again, I mean, I lean back towards like Facebook groups, but like there's, you can meet up with people to do different things that you actually, have common interest in.
Yeah. So as an A&M, every other week, I send an email called the Christopher's Corner.
Yes.
And at the end of Christopher's Corner, I always send a little snippet of things if you get bored. That's what I name it. It's just like things if you get bored. And it's always a list of stuff that essentially is things to do in the city.
Mhm.
And you know what I use? Colby said it. It's the city's webpage.
Yeah.
They always have events on there.
Mhm.
So just go to the events and kind of find it. And one thing that I realized that back to me being a foodie, many cities do restaurant week.
Yeah.
And so if you're a foodie like I am, I have a list now of restaurants that I want to go to that are here near the city that I got from just pretty much restaurant week. And then I started kind of asking and exploring myself. But, that kind of allows you to go do stuff outside of just sitting and eating at McDonald's.
I know. I agree with you, though. It's like, I think another piece of advice, like to go off of that, like Google your interests, like with your city. Like,
yeah.
So Christopher did that and has a list of restaurants that he wants to go to. And I heavily peruse for live music shows, and I actually just organized a few different things with our friend group about going to a few concerts. I Google like city live music and just see what comes up if that's your fancy. Like, let's say you like pottery, city pottery, see where the pottery studios are. I don't know, just something like that. Like, just explore your city or town, wherever you are, and spend your time away from the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting because I think both of us did not do that.
No, not in our first year.
Right.
Or first few years.
No.
So take it to heart.
Yeah.
We're speaking from experience where we did not. I didn't have anybody to tell me to do differently, though.
I did, and I just ignored it.
So you're for two different experiences. So don't ignore us. We really mean it. So Christopher was told and ignored it, and he regrets it. And I was never told, did it, and I regret it. So both aspects, just know that if you work too much, you will regret it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still love my job, and I have not gotten to the point where I was like, oh, man,
You had a little more balance, but you can admit that you were working a lot.
Oh, no. Yeah. I 100%. I still work a lot. What are you talking about?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to establish that and make sure.
I was just trying not to rag on you.
So, we talked about it and mentioned it multiple times. This is y'all's first big person job. That means a lot. And that you can be under your parents' insurance for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it depends on the state. So I'm not going to say what it is specifically to this state, but you are allowed to just be here and learn and kind of grow in what it means to have a big person job, which means there's big person bills, there's big person ideas, there's big person problems, there's big person insurance, all this happens. What would you say to someone is like, this is a big person job in terms of like the big person things that you would have to kind of focus on? If you don't know, insurance is the one that I'm always kind of.
I know. Well, like insurance and like your 401k, like I don't know, they're called, but whatever your retirement plan is.
Roth IRA.
Yeah, there's so many different options, but it's this. I mean, those two are. I mean, obviously, you want to if you're young enough and you have the ability to be on your parents' insurance, like ride that out, so you don't have to pay that. That's my suggestion to you. I was not able to do that. I had to because I lived in a different state. I was, I was fully in big girl mode. But yeah, if you can ride that out and save that cost. But yeah, make sure. I would say for insurance at this young age, unless you have any medical issues that you know of, like we're pretty healthy. And I think I got scared when I was signing up and I had the first year, like the most expensive one, but I didn't even go to a regular like PCP. So I was paying like an insane amount of money out of my paycheck every month for the top insurance package when I didn't need it. And so just don't get scared like I was. And maybe this is bad advice, I don't know. But then I was like, then I went to the middle tier for a little while and realized again that I like am healthy. I don't ever go to the doctor. Not to say that like not going to the doctor is the right move. You should. But like basic.
I'm about to go on a tangent with that. So
okay, but I believe, in my opinion, is if you're a healthy young adult, basic insurance with the HSA option is perfectly fine. It's going to cover your visits, your yearly visits to your doctor's appointments, and it's not necessary. You can get the highest one if you feel like you want to, but for me personally, it was never necessary for me to be paying such a high premium for the insurance. Right. And it was a little silly. So I will just take it into consideration. If you have questions about insurance, I don't even know who to point you to, but I'm going to say HR and maybe they can explain it to you a little bit. But I'm going to guess that there's probably someone at the desk in the same age group as you that had the same question. So if you have parents that are savvy or just older friends that are savvy, I'm still not savvy, but I'll tell you, I have the basic insurance and I have HSA and that's just fine. But then secondly, you should start, even if it's a small amount, contributing to a retirement plan.
Yeah.
Especially if your hospital or wherever you work matches. Try to, like, if you can afford to max it out. But even if you can't afford to max it out, put something in, because you're not going to regret that later when you're like 60. So the one thing about nursing is that it's kind of hard to retire young unless you are really thinking about your future at a younger age and how much you want to contribute to your retirement.
Right.
Because it's not like very lucrative in the sense where, like, I have friends that started out making more money than me in other fields and they're still making more money than me. Like, every year they just make exponentially more money than me. And it's like, oh my God, we have like the same level of degree. What the heck? Like, it's just the unfortunate truth that in nursing, like, we aren't paid our worth. And so you just have to be conscious of the amount that you're saving. And it's only going to pay off in the long run. So making sure that you set that up is, those are my top two. I can't think of a third one for that.
No,
that
I mean, the two, I was just thinking of one. So,
yeah. Okay.
But I'm cool with that. But two,
what were you going to say about insurance?
Yeah, well, no, it's not necessarily about insurance. If you find a different location or you're in a different spot and you're no longer under your normal primary physician, please find a PCP.
Yeah, that's super important.
Don't go. Yes, I'm glad you feel great. You know, that's wonderful that you feel great. That's wonderful that you are doing things right. Your brain is clear, your eyes are great. Like, all those things, that's great. But having a PCP as your founder, like, you're paying for insurance. You have to.
Yeah, you might as well get your yearly visit. And I say that as somebody that didn't have a PCP for years. And it's not good to go that long. It's not good. And I'll give you examples from myself. I passed out at a restaurant and then I didn't have a PCP. I had to find one. I had to get, and that took time. I passed out at a restaurant. I went to the emergency room. They were like, follow up with your PCP in a week. And I was like, I don't got one of those. So then I had to call one. I had to get appointments set up. I had to figure out all of that stuff. But if I had a PCP in advance, I could have gotten in a lot sooner and gotten things figured out.
And how do you follow up with a PCP if you don't have one to begin with? There's no following up, really.
Exactly.
Because they're going to be like, oh, this is this new problem that has now been attached to your insurance as a new problem, when it could have been something that could have happened years ago.
Yeah. So it's just something it's important to establish. I totally agree. And you know what? It's great if you don't have to go see them. But they also could, like, if you have a PCP, it could save you from, like, having to go to urgent care. Like, it'd save you money, honestly. Like, a PCP like copay is going to be cheaper than a urgent care visit copay. So keep that in mind too. Like, you're going to save yourself money if you, it's like simple things like, oh, I need a flu swab. Like, if you call your PCP's office, a lot of times that they're like, yep, okay, we'll meet you outside and swab you in your car. Like, and that's like a 15-minute appointment where you could wait hours at an urgent care for the same thing.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It really just depends on, your location of the United States. And if you're in a rural or more metropolitan area, like, all these places could be different, but, like, also be picky with your PCP.
Yeah.
Don't you dare settle for someone who's not going to listen to you.
That's true. I think, yeah, I agree with that. It's just hard sometimes. We're lucky because we have a great one, but I think sometimes people have limited options. Yeah, our PCP is great, and we just refer everybody to her. Christopher referred me to them, and then every person I'm like, oh, you don't have one? Let me give you this person's name. Like, even like my manager,
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
and then she mentioned something recently, and I was like, did you call the office? And she's like, I didn't set it up. And I was like, here's her name again. But yeah, it's like when you do have a good doctor, like, it makes everything a lot better too, because you don't, like, I don't know, so I just hate going to see a doctor. It's like a terrible classic like
that's a
healthcare
nurse,
worker thing, like being a terrible patient when you work in healthcare.
Right.
But when it's easy, like when you like the person that you're going to go see, it's like it makes it all a lot nicer. So if you can find one that you like, I think sometimes people have limited options depending on where they are and what their insurance covers and that kind of thing. But hopefully if you're working at a hospital or a doctor's office in that setting for a healthcare system, you have good enough insurance to find someone that cares about you and not so much as like the time constraint and actually listens to what you're saying, like Christopher said.
Right. And it's okay to be like, you went to that PCP the first time and you're like, nah, don't like them.
Yeah, go find a new one.
If that's the case, keep on walking. And if they're like, do you want to set up a new appointment? It's okay. Mm-hmm. Be like, nah, I don't feel like it. I did that. Like, I was like, no, I'm good. And I just kept going. I didn't tell them why.
Yeah, you don't have to.
And you don't have to.
Oh, that's something else. Okay, this is off the current topic, but also would like to just share with a new graduate nurse. If you're calling out of work, you don't have to give a reason.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like some people might feel guilty, especially myself, when I call out of work because I'll work when I'm sick, even though I shouldn't, and that's not good advice. If you're sick, you should stay home.
I mean, she did a dang podcast trying to get me sick with the plague.
I had like RSV or the flu or something, but I was COVID negative. So
I'm fine, by the way.
Yeah. Immune system of steel, but not me. And I blame that on the Invisalign. But that's tangential. Anywho, if you are sick, and even if you're not sick and you need a mental health day or you're calling out for whatever reason, you don't have to give a reason. You just say, I am Colby. I work on this unit. I'm calling out for my shift. It's 12 hours on this day. And they just say, okay. They should just say, okay. They might say, oh, I hope you feel better, whatever. But one, they don't have a right to know why you're calling out. So if they ask you why, you can say, I'm calling out.
Yep.
That's it. That's all you need to say. So just don't feel like you need to give like some long excuse or story or whatever explanation about why you're calling out. When you call out, that's it. Just want to. That's like a sidebar.
Sure. So, last kind of part before we continue to our little segment break. What was your experience as a Clin 1?
I had a really great preceptor who I became friends with.
Okay.
And we were really close the first 2 years. When I moved out of the state where we currently live back home for a year, and we stayed in touch. And then I moved back to where we are, and we stayed in touch for a little while. But she was a couple years older than me and started having kids. We kind of grew apart, but she's a wonderful person. And I think about her often, and we follow each other on social media, and I love to see that she's doing well. Without her, I feel like my experience could have been so shitty. Like, she was my lifeline that first year. Yeah. Like, she taught me so much, took me under her wing. Like, we hung out outside of work. We were both from New England, so we had like some common ground. I feel I was very lucky to have like an instant connection with my preceptor.
That's really neat.
Yeah, that was like so, like, she was such a good educator. Was patient, kind. I had like that classic situation with like a mean doctor who like kind of snapped at me, and I was like shook and tearful. What? And she was like, no, you're not going to speak to my new grad like that. And like, she just went to bat for me. She was awesome. So I was very lucky to have such a good first year and felt very like safe. Like, my preceptor made me feel safe and welcome. And it was a really good learning environment. Yeah,
that's good. That's really neat. I would say my first Clin 1 experience was also good. Like, I enjoyed it. It was definitely different because COVID. But
oh yeah.
But I really learned and got to understand nursing in a different perspective in a lot of different ways. But I had multiple preceptors. I had pretty much 2 for days and 2 for nights, and all of them, if I run into them in the hospital, like, it's really cool to see them, and I kind of
Mhm.
follow along. One of them just had a baby, like, recently after she was moving from the unit, and, just kinda be like, "Oh, how's your baby?" And another one is still on the unit that you work for, and
Uh-huh.
I stay in touch with him, and then one actually moved to the unit I work for, and so I see her very often, but,
Yeah.
yeah, it all also, we hit the NRP part, the nurse residency program. That's actually a very
I forgot to even mention that.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
for my own personal
oh,
experience.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, because you had a very different one, and I was very when we talked about this in the car one day, you were saying your residency program was, like, transition to practice, like, it was a transition to practice.
Yeah, it was also more unit based by our nurse educator, but it was specialty
Yeah,
focused on cardiology, and we had it was intense. I mean, we had like multiple classes on just learning telemetry. It was like it was like a very interactive, very intense. We did lots of mock codes.
right.
It was, I feel, again, I didn't do our current health systems nurse residency program, so I don't know exactly how it's set up because I didn't go through it, but it seems very different
Mm,
in comparison to what I did through mine.
right. Yeah, and I mean, our current health system is good. I did appreciate it, and they do take the time to bring in subject experts of certain things like respiratory therapists, your emergency response team, or we call MET, your managers. My manager actually goes and speaks to be like, hey, this is how you deal with managers, this is how you talk with them.
Uh-huh.
We are actually here for you type situations. And you then come together, and I think this is what kinda made it so good for me, was that I now have so many friends in so many different
Oh, like around the
yeah,
hospital
around
and
the
different
hospital.
specialties.
Right, because
That's nice.
they had us come together as a group, and it was asking the questions like, "Hey, you just all had a patient that died today. How are you feeling?" Like,
Mm,
how are you coping? What are you using as coping mechanisms? And you got to really, like, express how you're feeling or how you would have reacted, and,
yeah.
like, you kinda commiserate it together and try to figure out what to do, which was really nice.
Yeah. That is
So,
yeah, it's like another opportunity for you to, like, have peers that are going through the same thing as you
yeah,
and kind of being able to have those, like, deload conversations you know, when you're going through that first year.
right, because once again, you will struggle.
Mhm. Commiserate is a great word that you
Right,
used.
right.
Like, it
You
really
will
is.
struggle, and these are people that will hopefully be there to put an arm under you and keep you up.
Mhm.
So, make sure that you are, if you're not, not all health systems do this. Seems to be more of a teaching hospital esque type
Yeah.
thing that has magnet behind them. And, there are good things and bad things about magnet, and maybe that's something that we'll talk about in later topics.
Mm.
But it's definitely something that you, as a new Clin 1, should start to think about and kind of process, do I want to go into a hospital that has an NRP? And if I don't, how am I going to be able to be supported?
Yeah. Alright, is it time for our segment break?
It is.
All right, it's time for Nursing Wins and Woes, where we share the highs and lows of life and scrubs. Every shift brings its own set of victories and challenges, so this is where we get real about the moments that make us love our job and the ones that test our patience. Whether it's a big win, a small triumph, or a relatable woe from the floor, we're here to celebrate and commiserate together. All right. So a Clin 1 Wins and Woes. Well, you kind of shared the Clin 1 Wins and Woes on our first Wins and Woes segment break.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I definitely have more.
There's probably a laundry list of them from my first year. Okay, well, actually, okay, so I touched on it a little bit when I was talking about, like, my nurse preceptor, like, the one I had, like, a mean doctor yell at me.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, that'll be my win and woe. Okay, so I'll tell you guys what happened.
Oh, okay.
So I was just a little...
Wait a minute. I just want to make sure we clarify what wins and what you yourself are experiencing.
Yes, this
Okay.
is me. This is my story. It's not my patient.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, this is me
Okay.
potentially messing something up.
Okay. I'm just making sure. Just
listen to the story.
I will.
All right. So, cardiac floor. Patient was admitted for a Ticasin load. This is my first time with Ticasin.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm learning what is Ticasin, also known as dofetilide. What does this medication do? How does it affect the heart? Why are we giving it? Doing all of my questions, asking all my questions for my preceptor, reading about the medication.
Right.
Ticasin or dofetilide is an antiarrhythmic drug. Patients have to come into the hospital when they're starting this medication, and we monitor for the minimum of 6 doses. There's a high risk of patient going into a lethal rhythm called torsades when starting this medication because one of the properties elongates your QTC, which is a measurement in your cardiac rhythm. 2 hours after each dose is given, you're required to get an EKG.
Right.
My preceptor goes over everything with me. I'm like, okay, I got it. We gave the dose at like 8:45. So I'm like, 10:45, gotta get an EKG.
There it is.
I'm like, all right, I'm ready. She stepped off the floor. She had a meeting. She's like, all right, I got a meeting. I'll be back in 30 minutes.
She believed in you.
She believed me. She said, Colby, the EKG's due. And I said, 10:45, I got it, Liz. So Liz leaves. She's my preceptor. Liz leaves. And I go at 10:45. I get the patient all hooked up to the EKG. I get the EKG. I put it in the chart. And I'm like, wash my hands of it. I did it.
Okay.
I'm all done.
Yeah.
And this particular hospital had a mix of paper charting still. Like, this is like old school, and electronic medical record. We were using something called Meditech. It was before they transferred over to Epic.
Okay.
I like walk it over to the physical chart, and the electrophysiologist comes up to the floor a few minutes later, and he was a smaller man in stature. And so
compensating.
Classic, yeah. In classic smaller man stature
Napoleon.
nature. He had a bad attitude.
Oh no.
To everybody.
Oh no.
And it was my turn that day.
Oh no.
He looked at the EKG and I think he misread the time that it was gotten at, because I got it at the right time.
Yeah.
But he found me in the nurse's station and ripped me a new asshole because he thought that I got it. I can't remember if he thought I got it an hour later or an hour too early. I think it was an hour too early because it was at 10:45, but that's because I gave the med at 8:45. So it wasn't early at all. It was on time.
Yeah.
But I think he saw in his eye the 10 and didn't know that the dose was given at 8:45. So
so he thought it was done.
He thought I think he thought I got it early. And even if it was given at 9 and I got it at 10:45, like that's only 15 minutes early. But you would have thought that I committed a cardinal sin. And I thought I committed a cardinal sin. I was like, oh my God, did I get it too early? I was like so apologetic. I was like I was beet red, tearing up. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I fucked this up. Excuse my language, but I was like, this patient's gonna die. Like my first time with a medication that's super high risk giving it, and my preceptor left me, and she
believed in you.
Because she believed in me, and I understood what I had to do. And I did it right. But I didn't know this at the time. So I was just melting down. I was full on like nuclear plant meltdown.
Oh.
I did not cry, but I was teary-eyed.
Yeah.
And I went into the bathroom and then I cried. But I did not cry in front of that doctor who was such an asshole. And my preceptor came back and she's like, why is he acting so crazy? This is
Right.
insane. She was like, we gave the dose, same thing that I just said. Gave the dose at 8:45. We got the EKG. You got the EKG at 10:45. Nothing went wrong here. What is going on? So she like walked into the physician workroom and was like, I don't understand why you're so upset. This EKG was given 2 hours exactly after the dose was given.
Right.
There's no problem here. You don't need to speak to my new grad nurse in that manner. You need to re-look at the time. Like, she went off. And so that part was my win because she like validated that I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
She was so nice. She like sat down and we went over everything again. She's like, you know exactly what you did. Like, you did it exactly correct. There was no wrong part here.
Right.
Like, you're good, and I'm going to tell him about himself. And I was like, oh my God. And she did. And I was, after that day, that doctor never said a word to me ever again. He would just like put notes in. And yeah, he would like write in the chart, like the note.
Little person is he.
I'll show you a picture of him.
Okay.
I think he still works, but yeah, that was my win in my woes a Clin one though. But like that first time, I mean, again, unfortunately, there's always going to be a mean person that you work with, whether it's like direct, like it's a colleague, like I'm not a colleague, but a peer, like a nurse or maybe they're a tech. But when it's like a doctor, that's devastating for a new person in a role, in a job and everything. Devastating. But I survived it. Yeah. I'll never, and I will, in knowing me now, it's wild to think that I would let anybody speak to me like that. And I would stand up for my Clin one too if someone went off like that. But I also, like, the physicians that we work with are not mean like that. Like, they also would never, the ones that I work with never speak to my staff like that.
Right. Yeah, and surgeons are a little different.
Yeah, surgeons are different.
Yeah. But that's interesting. You still didn't do anything wrong, just to let you know. But
but I thought I did. It was horrible.
But to Colby's point, if you didn't do anything wrong, it's okay to stand up for yourself. And it's a...
I'm showing Christopher a picture of him. You can tell he's a small man.
I can tell. Yeah. Oh boy.
You can just tell.
I'm judging hardcore by that picture.
Honestly, he might have legally been considered a little person. I think, what is that for men under 4'11"? Sorry, this is unprofessional of me. He was an evil man. Okay.
I gotta recoup. But yeah, you have to make sure to stand up for yourself because you are right. If you did it right, you did it right.
Yeah. I did not have the confidence during that time to know that I did it right. He had me convinced I messed something up and that, like, the patient could die because of my mess up. It's not over an EKG that was done exactly on time.
Yeah, I know.
That's wild behavior. Wild behavior.
And to be able to get it on time as a nurse, that's
a triumph. That's a gold star. Right. That's a 5-star day. 3 Michelin star restaurant quality.
Wow. Yeah, I love some restaurants. I like the analogy. But I would say my wins in so I'm really struggling to think of the medication right now in my head. I really don't want to ask because I'm trying to think of it, and I know I should know it. And it's so sad that I cannot think of the actual medication.
Oh, what does it do?
It's it helps. The thing is, if I tell you what it really
is it sildenafil?
Huh?
Sildenafil?
Oh, no.
Oh, do you know why I asked them? It sounded like you were like, what it really does, but what it could also do is like erectile dysfunction, pulmonary hypertension.
See where you coming from with that. Man, I really people. So it's the primary drug for heart attacks. It's the first thing.
Nitro?
Oh my God, thank you.
Oh,
I legitimately could not think of it.
okay.
That is terrible.
Wow. That means your brain needs sleep.
Well, something. Today was a day. I dropped a vial of glutathione and broke it. I have never broken a vial of glutathione.
I smashed a bottle of B-Mix recently.
Did you really?
Oh, smashed it. It looked like I spiked it. It was by accident. It just fell out of my hand and it hit the right angle and just glass everywhere, shattered.
That's
B-Mix.
hilarious.
B-Mix smells gross, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know. But I literally was opening the door because it needs to be refrigerated, and the door hit my elbow, and I dropped it. And I was like, and my day continued to go down from there.
You had my day from yesterday.
So I was like, hopefully it wouldn't translate to this podcast, but I can't remember nitro. So, so nitro paste also helps with, vasodilating the veins to allow for more veins for the heart and hopefully subsiding the feelings of a heart attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were giving this when I was on a Clin 1 because I worked on a vascular intermediate floor. So we did a bunch of different things in terms of we did heart stuff, but we did like TMAs, BKAs, AKAs, transmetatarsal amputation, below knee amputation, above knee amputation, and other things like that. But I had a patient that was having a bunch of chest pain, and they were like, they put in an order for nitro paste. I went and got the nitro paste and automatically put the nitro paste on the patient. Going to Colby's point on knowing side effects of medication, one side effect of medication of nitro or nitro paste is that it lowers blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not check the blood pressure.
So what happened?
Luckily, it wasn't terrible. We just gave some more fluid and it brought it up. But it was close. It was like 80 over 40.
Mhm.
Like it was
Like,
bad. And this was right when I had gotten off of orientation and I had done a thing and my charge nurse was there. And actually this charge nurse, it was on night shift. This charge nurse was absolutely amazing and really great and really sweet and very motherly and like not my preceptor at that time, but was very, very motherly, very sweet. And she saw me do it and she went and did a little like quick blood pressure like immediately after me. And I'm worried because this person's having
chest pain. You're focused on the chest
right.
pain, yeah.
And I'm so and this is something that you as a Clin 1 probably will encounter, being so task forward and task minded that you forget that we as nurses have to critically think.
Mhm.
And so she did it. And she didn't say anything to me during the time. We fixed the issue. But I came back out afterwards. She was like, Christopher, you did great. You did the things. But remember what medications do. She was like, I grabbed the blood pressure and luckily we were able to fix things. But like that could have gone bad. And, and she was very, very motherly in her statement. And I was very encouraged to hear her say that. So that was my woe. My win. We had lysis. We had lysis patients, and patients that are having lysis done is essentially having a line being put in their femoral artery and pumped TPA in it so that the clots in their legs will kind of undo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were, because we were MU, we had to do, I'm pretty sure it was hourly at the time, it's been a while, pedal pulse checks.
Mm-hmm.
Pedal and posterior tibial. And we also, a lot of the times because of this, their pulses weren't good anyway. So we had to use a Doppler, right? And so when you got a Doppler, you used it and you traced it and you found it and you hear that whoosh, 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 and it was always cool. Like, it was really neat. But sometimes you wouldn't hear it because it was clogged, right? And that's just
that's why they're there getting that treatment,
right? But if you start to learn a little bit about the physiology of things, you break a clot and it goes away. You bring all this blood, nutrition, and all this stuff back to that part of the leg. You have a higher risk of I had it in my head.
Is it compartment
syndrome? Thank you.
I was like, is this where we're going?
Oh my God. You have a higher risk of compartment syndrome. And I was being a diligent nurse and I found it. And then you had to what we had. You had to monitor the leg size. So we had tape and you would monitor the leg size. And I realized it was starting to get hard and firm and it was getting bigger.
Yeah.
And so that person had to go down to emergent OR for a fasciotomy to get the compartment syndrome released. And so that was my win. I was like, oh, yay.
You're like, I caught that.
I caught that. So, and actually, that was when I was on as a preceptee at the time. And my preceptor was like, yay, great job.
Good job.
She was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. So it was really cool to kind of really see that.
Yeah, it's like one of those things that can happen. It's something that's why we do all the monitoring, but you don't see it like that often. So like when it does happen, you're like, oh shit, this is happening. This is what I've been training for.
We can do this.
Yeah, we did. I had like a similar win when I was it wasn't a new grad. It was at my second job where I worked in post. It was like step down from CVICU. So cardiovascular ICU, surgical side. And I had someone with a chest tube and they started to get crepitus.
Ooh.
And like, it obviously always a risk when you have a chest tube, but like you don't see it that often.
Right.
And crepitus is like when air gets under the skin tissue and it feels like, we called it like snap, crackle, pop. Like you can press on the skin and you can feel like the air bubbles. So yeah, I've also had a similar like, oh, there's crepitus here. I know what this is.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I will say another woe that's actually really fun and just a fun thing to remember. When I wore scrubs, I don't have a butt, so I wore a belt to keep my scrubs on because I because I had to keep my scrubs off. I don't have a butt to keep them up, so I needed. And I had a lot of stuff in my pockets. Thank you very much. I had my clipboard, my brain, my flushes, my stethoscope was hanging on the edge, because I didn't hang it around my neck. I had it in a little holster thing. So I had a lot of stuff weighing it down, but my butt didn't help. But yeah, so the belt it's an Under Armour sports-esque or golf-esque belt, and so you kind of strapped it in and then closed it down, but the buckle was metal. And I had a patient that needed to go down for MRI.
Oh, should have taken it off.
Yeah. So I had to get all the stuff off and was like, let me get this all off, blah, blah, blah. And that was I went down for the MRI, took all of the stuff off, took all the things out, did all the things.
Did your pants fall off?
No.
Oh, that's what we were getting to.
Went in and my patient actually had dentures in, and because I worked in home health and nursing homes, I reached my finger in, popped that denture out, and got it out.
That's disgusting.
I was like, and I was like, okay, good. And basically, I feel this thing vibrating near my nether regions, and I'm like,
what's going on here?
What's going on? And I realized, I'm like, it's my belt. My belt buckle was trying to get pulled away from my body. And so the MRI machine is always on. Make sure you take all the metal off.
Yeah, that's an important one. I've been down in MRI and I've taken everything off, but I had a bobby pin in my hair.
Oh.
Forgot about it, and I was like, oh, I need to get out of here. Like, it's just like a weird tingly feeling, like when you feel it start to pull, like your belt is vibrating. I also feel like I've been down there when I've absolutely had nothing, like I've taken everything off, and I still feel like that magnet is so powerful. Makes you feel weird.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the last part of the segment. If you have any wins and woes in your first year of nursing, please let us know. We would love to hear them. We'd love to laugh. We'd love to cry with you. It is kind of fun and interesting to hear. But like, we don't. Interestingly enough, we talk a lot during the podcast, but we don't get to really. We try to stay away from work if we.
Yeah, outside. We try to on topics. Like, let's be friends outside of work.
Right. So we talked about newbies being specifically Clin 1s, but that can also transition to those being Clin 2s, Clin 3s, and Clin 4s. You know, Colby had went to multiple different units and within different hospitals. I have just transitioned from, a different unit and then a different role, but you still are new, and those still causes problems and everything. I think one major thing that I kind of wanted to hit on, because we're not done talking this long. We'll probably talk at it more length later. Is the whole you've got to let your pride go.
Yeah,
you've got to. It's okay to not know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you just have to. I think we said it a bunch in the beginning, but you just have to like be willing to ask questions.
Right.
And there is no stupid question except for the ones that are not asked. I love that. I'm gonna keep saying it.
Well, there you go for that. And yeah, and it, just because a nurse that is experience-wise younger than you in terms of general nursing practice is teaching you something that is specific to a specialized practice doesn't mean that you're stupid, doesn't mean that you're being belittled, doesn't mean that you need to prove yourself that you're better.
And I think also you need to like humble yourself.
Right.
Like if you're coming in with experience and there's someone that's younger as your preceptor, like just humble yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Be more open-minded. And that's something I experience frequently because, and we touched on this a few podcasts ago, but the longevity in bedside nursing is dwindling. And there's often, I would say like 5 years or less is probably the average. And we should probably look up the numbers because I'm actually curious. But from my perspective, it feels like most nurses is 5 years or less these days recently. And so you'll find that a lot of times a preceptor, if you have a lot of experience, if you're coming in as a traveler specifically, you might find that your preceptor is younger than you, and you just have to go in with it with an open mind, a curious mind, because you have experience and you've done it for a long time. You need to be open-minded to how they're doing it at that institution. You've got to learn their way and just know that is going to happen over and over again.
Yeah. Which is, you've got to be willing to do it.
Yeah, you can't be rigid. You've got to be flexible. Don't be the person that says, why do you do it this way? Because this way is better. Like, nobody wants to hear that. And if they're showing you something, like, there's a policy, we're going to do it to what the policy says. Like, there's just nothing worse. And it's really hard to not be that person, because I do it a lot in my head when I went to new places. I'd be like, why are they doing it this way? This is not the most efficient way. But you just don't be saying it out loud over and over again. They don't give a crap. And they're doing it the way that their hospital wants them to do it. So that's how you have to do it if you're working there. So
and it may be the only way they've known, too.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, ask questions. Don't ask why you do it this way, but you can say, oh, have you ever seen it done this way? And they can give you feedback on that. It's just all in how your tone is, how open-minded you are. It's a lot of just being nice. Like if you're a new person at a new hospital, like Christopher said, like you have to get rid of that pridefulness. You if you want to be well received and you want to have a positive experience, it always helps to like start with kindness yourself and hope that you get that in return.
For sure.
Yeah. I'd also like to say, like, being the new person, if you are a good way to like establish that you're a good worker and a hard worker and you care, if you have the availability to help others when they need help, the same way you would, I hope, in anything else, that you offer that help. I feel like I've worked with people, and I think the difference between, not that like being liked is the most important thing, but the difference between being well liked and working well as a team and not, is your willingness to be outgoing and friendly and help others. I've seen people like just come to work and do care for their 4 patients, and then when they're like having downtime, they don't like help anybody else. They just sit in a corner.
Right. Yeah.
And they like have headphones in or something, or they're just like doing their own thing. Like, you're not going to end up having a positive experience in those situations. You're probably not going to be welcomed into the fold as easily. It's just like being kind of standoffish and cold is never going to get you anywhere.
Right.
So if you want to fit in easier or have an easier time in the setting, like, it helps to just be more helpful.
That's true.
It's a good way to make a friend for when you're in the weeds.
There it is. All right, class dismissed.
Let's wrap it up. Go ahead.
That's a wrap for today's session of Nursing Life 101. We hope you found some useful takeaways to bring back to the floor. Remember, nursing is a lifelong learning journey, and we're here with you.
If you want to connect, find us on Twitter at NurseLife101 or on Facebook at Nursing Life 101. And don't forget to subscribe and share with fellow nurses. Until next time, take care of yourselves and keep making a difference out there.